Welcome to Inspired Learning, the Path of Exile podcast with Badger and Yoji. My name is Badger.
I'm Yoji.
And today we are joined by the lovely Brittleknee. Thank you so much for coming, Brittleknee. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and thank you for the invite. Happy to be here.
No problem. We've got a pretty juicy, fun episode today all about Path of Exile events, or, well, community-run events. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about, official events in the past and everything like that as well, but as a lot of you may or may not know, Brittleknee is pretty heavily involved in the community-run side of events, dealing with a bunch of different events and helping around with them, and also running a couple of your own as well. But before we jump into that, how have you been, Brittleknee, and what have you been up to, specifically Path of Exile, I guess?
It has been a pretty lovely league so far, I guess, if we kind of ignore all the sort of tragic events towards the beginning of the league with the league start and other issues. I've been kind of taking a leisurely stroll through everything, working on my challenges a bit earlier than I typically do, and just kind of using the league as like a build exploration league because there weren't a ton of new skill gems added. The stuff that was added, it wasn't necessarily like my niche as far as what I enjoy out of skills and abilities in the game. But I did like Corrupting Fever. That was my most recent build. That was really fun. It's kind of turned Wanders into something that's approachable and fun again. Because a lot of it's attribute based, and I'm not a big fan of attribute based builds because I find crafting gear for those very tedious. So people that like the challenge of crafting probably love those types of build, but for me, wanding was kind of always closed to me in that way. So it's been great. Corrupting Fever plus Connect Blast is a ton of fun. I just finished that build up. But yeah, it's just been sort of like we'll work on a couple of different builds. I've been through 3 or 4 so far. Been trying out different strategies with the Atlas passives being a little bit more locked in this time around. And it's just been kind of like a casual exploration sort of league. And as far as events go, there's all sorts of stuff going on.
Yeah, there is.
Yep.
Yoji. Well, actually, no. You were going to say something, Yoji. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, I find it interesting because for me the league has been a bit similar. I've been just like messing around with different builds, not really like pushed any characters super far, and just like been hopping from character to character, which is actually very, very like unusual for me. Normally I stick to like 1 or 2 builds per league, usually like one build like as a league starter, and then a second build where I really just like grind it out till the end, like try to min-max the SSF gear as much as possible. But this league has also for me been, I think I'm on my 5th character now, which for me is like as more than double than I usually do per league, and I'm still playing. So that's quite unusual. Yeah, I've been also I try out the low life petrified blood stuff because I found that interesting. I've been starting with corrupting fever with a blade storm, which turned out to be like really strong, but just not my playstyle. Interestingly enough, but yeah, been pretty interesting to see that pop up in like some of the races and stuff now. Where I was like, yo, that was my league starting build, and apparently it could have actually been really good if I kept playing. But that's kind of cool. About the challenges, how many challenges do you usually go for? Kind of give us perspective. How much of a grind you are up for?
I always go for 36 minimum. If I really enjoy a league, I'll push to 40. And then it also comes down to how RNG some of the challenges are. So my first league ever, I started in Harbinger League, and I got 35 in my first league, and my 36 would have been to kill Shaper. And I had sat down that morning, like having bought a couple sets, and was like, all right, I'm going to do this today. And then I got up, made coffee, and I came back and sat back down. I couldn't move my character anymore because that's like when the leagues would just like freeze when they were done.
No.
And I was like, oh no, like I was so close, like I was gonna do it that day. I was so mad. And then the next 2 leagues I ended up getting 40 of 40, and then Incursion happened, and Incursion just broke me because it was all of these RNG based challenges, which
Incursion was bad, yeah.
Yeah, it was like
all the rooms, right?
Yeah, it was you had to get the right rooms to like tier 3, and then with like for example, like the corruption, the locus of corruption, like you had to get every single outcome. And to this day, like everyone has those things in PoE that's never happened for you. My 2 things is I've never actually double corrupted anything successfully. I always brick it or poof it.
No.
Through many. Yes, this has never happened, and I have never dropped a 2-socket abyss item, like the gloves or boots or hat, or at the time.
I can relate with that. Yep.
Yeah, that one is. Those are the 2 things that have never happened for me.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
anyways, Incursion broke my very short-lived 40 of 40 streak, and then from there it's usually like 36 or 40 or maybe 38 here and there.
Yeah, I think I've only done 140 out of 40 as well. I think I did that in Harbinger League, actually. I'd have to go back and look, but I think it was Harbinger. I think I played the most, well, or just kind of like played the end game the most and just grinded the most in that one. But yeah, I actually can't remember. Yeah.
Interesting. I usually like don't really go for challenges. I think the last time I went for challenges was 8 out of 8 in Bloodlines. In Hardcore Bloodlines, that was the last one. I got the full red Seraph armor, which doesn't even look all that cool, but I have it, yay. And usually I go for like 24 if I like the 24 one. You get 12 without looking at the challenges, and usually I end up with like 22 without looking at the
Yeah,
challenges.
it's
And then
around
there's
22,
like one,
23, yeah.
yeah, then there's like one where I go, okay, I guess I have to clear the fetid pool and do like a chance recipe to get the last two. Okay, I can do that. But that's usually what I end up with. So I usually get to like 24-ish if I care about the 24 reward. If I don't care about the 24 reward, I will just not do the fetid pool, I guess. But yeah, that's pretty much. But yeah, I think going for challenges can be a really cool thing. And I'm waiting for the league where like I like the 36 reward enough to actually get me to like push for, because I think it can actually be really fun and give you like some more extra goals on top of, hey, I just want to like do the end game, see my build like progress or whatever. I think that can be really cool.
Some of the
Yeah.
ones that I like too are the ones that kind of push different like playstyles, I guess. Like sometimes
Yeah.
the boss ones where it's like kill a boss a certain way can be just like exceptionally tedious and frustrating. But then sometimes they're kind of neat enough in a way for you to be like, oh, well, I can make a build that can also do these 3 challenges. And that's really cool. And like, so the ones that sort of encourage build diversity or for you to kind of like jump off and maybe try something that you haven't done before are always pretty neat. And then there's some of those challenges where you're just like, why? Like, why do you literally hate your player base? Why would you do this?
Yeah, that was I think was it last league where there was one where you had to do Dodre with the cauldron and you had to like do the cauldron like so many times. It was just so annoying.
Yeah, there's some
found that
strange
really
ones. Or
Yeah.
kill this boss while it's bleeding and you're also bleeding, or like
I mean that one I felt like wasn't too bad.
You can cheese them, you can, yeah, but it's like they're there just to cheese pretty much for most people, unless you're a build that's like, oh, I'm bleeding. I can apply bleeds, but yeah.
I mean, there's some cool ones where you like can't get hit by certain abilities, so it's like you actually have to like properly. You basically have to play the fight better than you normally would, which I think is cool. But if you have to play worse, I always feel like it's a bit of a weird one.
The ones I enjoyed the most, I think, were the conditional invitations, where it was like the 100% AoE on the field and stuff like that. I really love those. Like more challenges like that, please. Things that really, really, because it wasn't necessarily like taking an encounter and making it annoyingly impossible, or like you have to be 5-head about solving the problem of doing it unless you want to roll a second build. But those are really fun in the way that like it changed each encounter enough that you had to adjust your playstyle, and that I think was my favorite part. Like the extra proj on the Breachlord one makes Tool a lot more scary. So if Tool gets twinned, then that's like double extra scary. You have to position a little bit better. Stuff like that was really neat. And the increased AoE on the Feared, I have to say, is very spicy.
Yeah, that sounds really spicy with that Zeri's Flame Blast and the Elder
because
Circle
she can
and
still
slams.
twin. She can still twin in the middle of that, which she did for me.
Oh no.
I was just like, oh god. But it was
no.
really fun, really, really riveting.
Yeah, no, I always push for 36 as well. Like that's kind of the baseline for me. But I think it's 36 and just always 36 now. There's never really that grind for me to push to 40 anymore. Mainly just because, well, I don't want to just burn myself out on Path of Exile every single league. And also, there's so many other games that I enjoy playing now. I'm like, all right, get my 36 done. Oh, and events as well. Actually, that ties into today's episode. There's so many more kind of events coming to light that, you know, are a lot more... Well, there's just heaps more to play, basically, in the end game. So it's kind of like, get your 36 done, or get close to 36 and then use the events to kind of finish those off. I actually finished a couple of challenges off in BPL, which was pretty fun. Accidentally, but it's kind of nice that you can get the challenges done in private leagues as well. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's very important, I think, for private leagues to even be a thing for everyone who cares about challenges. Otherwise, it wouldn't really go into private leagues, because I know a few people play like different private leagues each league, and then when the private league ends, they go like to trade league to finish their challenges, like buy the rest of the stuff they need or whatever, anything that wasn't accessible in the last like 1 month or 2 months.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of that's going to be Taskmaster, conditionals, and the Bloom for Oshabi. For people migrating out to finish.
Yeah, I had a couple of viewers really annoyed at me that I finished the Taskmaster conditionals on my first Taskmaster I beat. I felt pretty bad about that as well. Yeah, I just like in the pause screen as the trial master was there. I like, okay, let's open up the challenges. Let's have a look. Let's read them all. Okay, chat. What does this mean? I don't know what this is. Please tell me. So half of it was chat. So thank you guys, but yeah, I know there's a lot of people who are sitting on 39 out of 40 and still haven't completed that one. Yeah, or the Oshabi one in SSF and that sort of thing. It's
Oshabi and SSF. I know a few people who just have had 0. Still, and they are like focusing on Harvest with Watchstones, with like just running it, and they just get 0.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
I think that's maybe they made that a tiny bit too rare for there to be a challenge.
And that's the main reason I don't go for 40 is just like you see a couple of those sometimes, and it's like, am I actually going to enjoy this grind at all, or is it just or is it me just paying, if I'm on Trade League, am I just paying a bunch of money to complete this? It doesn't get me. Gets other people though, and that's fine as well. Play the game how you want, really.
I mean, luckily there are usually like 1 or 2 of these like really special, crazy, either RNG based ones. They rarely have like more than 1 or 2 where I'm like, I never would want to do that. So I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of completing challenges in private leagues and private leagues themselves, there has already been quite a bit happening on the scene this time around, and will continue to be pretty much up until the end of the season, really. And it seems like this is becoming a little bit more of a staple of just kind of more and more private leagues, one after the other, of lots of different types of things happening. So it's really cool that we do have Brittleknee here to talk about a bunch of that with. Well, I've got what Yoji's written up here. The Pee-wee League life cycle is kind of taking a form of its own in terms of, you've got your normal official Path of Exile league, teaser season, and then the actual league itself, and then the events start happening, and then there's usually like maybe a little bit of off season that's becoming shorter and shorter now because of some bigger events that are happening. Does. Yeah. And I've been talking a lot because a lot of people might have played BPL with other event organizers and that sort of thing in terms of actually trying to time things so nothing overlaps, and so it is like a really nice smooth transition and people can prepare for the next one and everything like that. So this time around we had BPL, and now the Havoc Team Blast is happening pretty much now. We'll probably be doing some more spectating after it, and then probably Gauntlet after that. We haven't got the announcement just yet, but I think that's happening today, right?
This hinted at some glove related announcements.
Yeah, the announcement, as per true PoE fashion, the announcement of the announcement has occurred.
Yes.
So we don't know exactly when it will happen, but there will be a Gauntlet. I think that has been confirmed since last league already, that there will be a Gauntlet this league. And I think the next one is also basically confirmed. So apparently, I think this mentioned something on stream that they have like 2 leagues already like locked in as an event type schedule ahead, and then remains to be seen if they still want to do the cooperation and stuff, I guess. But yeah,
and then we've got some other fun events after that usually happen. Well, I don't know, Brittle, is a bingo league being planned for this league as well? I'm sure it is, right?
Yep, we're just waiting on the Gauntlet dates to be fully locked up and loaded so we know when to plan bingo around, because there's a lot of people that want to participate in both. So as you said, everyone's sort of like staking out on certain weekends, so we got to figure out when our weekend is, right? So
yeah, definitely. Yeah,
there's only
it makes a lot of sense,
right? Because like when you plan these events, like with a 13-week cycle, you got to like chop the first 4 weeks off; they're gone, right? Because like everyone's going to be playing the league. Well, I'd say like 3 to 4. Sometimes if there's a lot like a drop off, maybe you can start earlier. But that's like completely dead space because everyone's going to be playing the main league, getting their challenges done, just sort of getting the new league out of their system. And then sort of like as we, I guess we're calling it now, the event season starts to kick off and get like underway. And that goes actually all the way to the end now because Havoc has been doing the blitz races right towards the end of the league in the last couple of weeks too. So like almost right down to the wire, we've got events all the way through nearly every single weekend.
I'm so excited for the future of community events, really.
Yeah,
And
me
it's
too.
really cool as well to like I don't want to talk too much about it because it's like my own creation and that feels weird, but to be able to bring BPL into this as well and kind of fit another little niche there and kind of fill some more time between that downtime of when people are like, oh, I'm kind of done with the Path of Exile League. And then interact with all these other people who have been in the scene a lot longer and gain wisdom from them and everything like that. Brittleknee, I was going to ask, how has, because you've been involved in some capacity and in larger or smaller capacities for quite a while in kind of developing this community event scene. How has that all kind of like progressed and panned out? Maybe to your expectations or different to how you expected or anything like that? Like, I just want to hear from you.
Well, when we got started, or at least when I started getting involved with the racing scene, I was initially kind of brought in as a shoutcaster for Campbell's events alongside Ziggy and Octavian. And then sort of seeing how they were run on the other side of the screen, so to speak, I just thought we could do a lot better to sort of like modernize and make the events a little bit more compelling for the viewer experience. Because my goal at that point in time was if we were going to essentially sell racing back to GGG as something that was worth the time and investment and development, then we needed to sort of cultivate a very, like the entire esport viewer experience. We needed to sort of like up our game and we developed the casting tool that allows us to zip between different racers or teams, show the ladder, show clips, that sort of thing. Like we needed to up our viewer experience so that there would be more engagement overall, and thus through more engagement it's basically free advertising. If we can drive enough of this, then maybe they're like, hey, racing's that thing we used to do, and like I don't know, maybe we should pay attention to it again. So that was sort of like my goal in getting involved with the scene in the beginning, was like, how can I help? Like, one, I understand and accept my limitations as a player, that'll never be a top end competitor, but that doesn't mean that like my usefulness is completely wiped off the board. Like there's other things that I can offer and do. So I just really sort of concentrated on like sort of more of the administrative side of things and helping the events get run, like sort of creating a lot of the sort of, I guess, support crew roles and how they set up for events, and so that the broadcasts can go a little bit more smoothly, and then like events are actually being sort of reported in real time. Everything from the development of a tool that can watch everyone's accounts and let casters know when certain items are acquired, to a tool that watches people's atlas progression. So at any given time, a caster can click on an image that shows a particular racer's atlas state. I mean, we've did a lot for sort of like elevating and sort of cultivating these tools that are very, very specific to PoE and PoE's viewing experience. And then that sort of just evolved into me more or less stepping up and organizing a few events of my own after Camel retired. And then after that, it's just sort of been like helping other folks with their events, and kind of I ended up working with Ray of GDQ at the end of last league to get the PoE showcase on.
Yeah, there was a PoE
So cool.
showcase race on GDQ, right? I saw that.
Yep.
How did that come to be? Because I know that like people
Yeah.
have talked about PoE should be on like GDQ at some point at least, because we have a racing and a speedrunning scene basically, but it never really happened.
So for the longest time, I don't know if this was like a more recent rule change or what exactly happened, but for the longest time, I thought we were essentially barred because I thought that GDQ was only going to take like games that existed and had like speedruns for. So the rule, I think, I'm trying to remember the exact language of the rule, was like current
It has
games,
something to do with the
games
offline
currently
games,
in
right?
production or something like that. So an online
Oh,
game
okay.
which doesn't have an in production time, like it's not like finished. And so like things can change that, therefore it's harder to speed run. But then they started allowing this, like games that are still currently in production to show up. There was I think like a Destiny 2 run and some actual D3 stuff as well. And so
Yeah, true.
Ray reached out to me and was like, "Yo, I see you have, your fancy Twitter title of calling yourself a community, racing person. So community racing person, can I work with you?" And I was like, "Yes, I would like that a
That's
lot."
nice.
They reached
So
out to you.
like,
That's so cool. Yeah.
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 So it's something I really wanted to happen. I actually ended up like hosting a speedrunning season last league, or not speedrunning season, a charity event, sort of like to emulate GDQ. We did a charity relay where we had a bunch of people sign up as teams, and they would compete. The people that like placed in the competition order could then like secure a portion of the prize pool for the charity that they intended the money to go towards. And so we raised like $6,500. It went to 7 different charities, and it was like, yay, we did some GDQ like stuff. Yay, good for us. And
That's
so
pretty
like
nice.
to then turn around and then be able to like do a GDQ event rather than just emulating them was really cool. And it was like it was a big moment for me personally, because it's something that I'd wanted for a long time. And I thought we were going to have to do sort of like a mock-up event again, like this fall. But no, we got to actually do the
The
real
real
thing.
thing. Yeah.
That's so
And
good. That's so awesome. Yeah.
and what's really
Yeah.
cool is that now that we've been sort of vetted by this entire experience, is that if people want to get good at PoE speedrunning, they are actually absolutely allowed to submit runs for the big GDQ event. So the SGDQ and the, I think whatever the other one is, the big events,
ADGQ, right?
something, I think
AGDQ.
so.
Awesome games. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you, like anybody, it doesn't have to be me or you or even Tai Tai, like anybody who wants to submit a run and feels like they have compelling commentary can do so at any time.
I'm gonna submit my Twilight Strand run. My Twilight Strand any %. Let's go.
So I think that's really cool, because that essentially opens up the door for this community. And on the other side of that too is sort of there hasn't been a lot of focus on offline racing, so to speak. So speedrunning in general is not something that you see casted a lot like you see our live races, because it's a slightly different sort of goal, where you're trying to beat other people versus like beat your personal best or beat a world record or something like that. And speedrunning, unlike racing, you can do as many resets as you want, right? It's not like if you die, you're out or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I worked with one of my friends and one of the community developers for the overall racing scene, who's the big brain behind the Atlas bot, Pertnex. And together with our benefactor Rex, we have set up a speedrunning season for PoE. And this is largely kind of passed under the radar, because I didn't expect this to really take off. I think it's going to take like 3 or 4 leagues before we actually have enough people kind of interested in this sort of thing, because we're essentially building this scene from scratch now. Because the GDQ event was like, hey, we exist, and like now we're trying to put some events together so that it can continue to exist and sort of grow from here.
Yeah, to establish like a scene, and people who keep getting and being involved is, I think, like really helpful for that.
Right. And the best way to have this go on would be something that is sort of like mimics the old race seasons. So it's a 6-week season with a different endpoint every week that people can submit to. And it runs basically in the background of all the other events by being something that people can record for and submit times for casually in their own time. It doesn't stack up on the weekend. It doesn't make people choose between which event they want to run. Like if they wanted to do a speed run, Thursday and then do Havoc's event this Saturday, Sunday, they could. So that was really the idea for it. And we really wanted to emulate this sort of accessibility that the old racing seasons had, like where you see it show up in the bar. It's like, this season's going on now, and you just hit the join button and you'd be able to launch. And so we've sort of done that.
In some way, it's actually more accessible, though, right? Because I think the old racing seasons where the races were still set at set times. So it's like, okay, at 5 p.m. that day, you have to like do the Val kill or whatever, and that day is the Brutus kill. And I think being able to record in your own time, or like race in your own time, like asynchronous racing is what people called it back then, was something people have asked for basically since the beginning of racing seasons.
Yeah, and Over the
I think
last
that's a
couple
really
of
good
leagues,
change.
we've done a lot of development to create tools for both asynchronous racing and for this as well. So the way this one's set up is that you basically sync your PoE account to our Discord bot, and then you just hit exclaim join, and then like you are in. Like that's as easy. That's how easy it is to get involved in this season. And then
So
some of the
good.
other stuff that we've done as far as development is concerned is the oh shoot, I lost my train of thought here.
I was
Crud.
just thinking, off random thought. When are we gonna get official support for
Yeah,
time trial ghosts in in Path of Exile speedruns?
that
When
would
can
be
we run
really
against
cool.
Tai Tai's ghost?
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah,
That'd
that would be really
awesome.
cool.
Yeah.
I always loved that in like racing games where you had your own ghost of the
Yeah,
last
yeah.
run or whatever, like
I was
online.
thinking, I
Yeah,
was trying to
that's so
remember. It was
cool.
Viper Racing, or for what was it, the Dreamcast?
Viper
I think that
Racing.
had
Oh,
that.
wow.
Yeah, there are a lot of like old racing games, and I think basically like,
Mm.
even like freaking Mario Kart, like I think 64,
Yeah, you can
they
do
had that.
ghost time
Like,
trials, yeah.
I think time trials always had that in like old games.
Yeah.
I think that would be really cool. And in general, there's like you have to like develop most of these tools yourself, like the Atlas thing and like grabbing the. I mean, there's an API for like grabbing characters from the site, I think. But for the Atlas, I wouldn't even know like where to start with that, for example.
So it would be really nice if GGG would create an Atlas endpoint for us to like go,
Yeah.
hey, server, can you just dump a JSON on me that says like all the different maps people have completed at what bonus level and how many watch times they have?
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
nice.
instead, we had to develop a bot that
Mhm.
watches Twitch streams that recognizes the center
The Atlas?
compass and then takes a picture.
Whoa.
Oh
And
my
it will
that is-
god.
cycle through
That is
scenes.
really advanced.
Oh.
It's a
Okay.
lot of extra work for something
Yeah.
that could just be like a API endpoint.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And you know, we can talk about that in a little bit, and through developing BPL as well with a really, really nice core team around me. You know, there's been some great stuff that we've been able to do with the API, and there's been some other stuff that we would think would be extremely easy, and it's like, you know, we're beginning to realize how little support there is for this kind of stuff, for us to be able to track, you know, what we want to track, and what could potentially look. I'm not a developer. I'm not behind the scenes, but what I've talked to people about and be like, you know, we probably could get a couple of things pretty easy if there was a little bit of time invested. And I guess that's what this is all about, right? Trying to prove to GGG that, hey, people want to participate and watch this stuff, and it's good for you guys. So, like,
and it's
you
worth
know,
putting
let's have a
forward
little
the
more.
development resources, like a little bit of those, and maybe also the server resources, because APIs can, of course, like also be be a lot of strain on the service, as we know from the trade API in the past.
Of course, definitely.
But I think there would not be as much requests for like people actually looking at Atlas stuff, and you could. It would also be something that would have been opt-in. I think. I know a lot of people would maybe not during a race or whatever have everyone see the Atlas.
Yeah.
Because like there's some competitiveness happening. But yeah, I think for those events, I think there's a lot to be done. And even if you're not a developer, you still can think of like what would be nice to have, and is it possible now, and maybe just like come up with ideas and then see. Let the development software people decide what is actually possible and what's feasible or reasonable to do and expect.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm actually Brittleknee. I'm quite interested in talking a bit more about how we could potentially integrate. You know, this is we'll do this after at some point, but you know, BPL more into the actual scene of everything, because it is still kind of its own entity, and I really just want to, you know, I want to get it involved and as much as we can. But we've already started working on, from this time around, some pretty interesting stuff that should hopefully carry through to the next BPL. As much of a success this BPL was, it was really rushed, and that was shown in quite a few glitches in the website that we had, and some tracking stuff and some organizational stuff with teams as well. But hopefully this time around it's going to be a lot nicer. Yeah, we'll see.
I mean, with BPL, you're basically limited on which types of challenges you can do in BPL by what you can track, right? So the more different stuff you can track is the more different stuff you could actually put forward as a goal for the teams. So because if you can't track something at all, like you can't, for example, easily do like an Atlas progression, hey, you get a points for every map that you complete or whatever, or every unique map or something like that, because it's difficult.
It comes down to manpower to overcome limitations in the API, and getting that manpower is one, organized, and then two, just getting people that are willing to. Yeah, sure, I'll sit around for 12 hours and look at Atlas pictures and write down how many
Yeah.
maps there are. Like, that's, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
we are only as good as our support crews, and sometimes
Exactly.
those
Yeah.
can be quite trimmed depending on the hour load, essentially, of an event, because
Yeah.
a lot of
Also,
people are
especially
working. And
also especially when the league sizes start to outscale like the people involved, right? Like PPL are 2,100 people cap right
Was not
now.
expecting it. It was
That would be a
crazy.
lot of Atlas pictures. If you have like, I don't know, like 3-4 teams racing, it's not a problem to look at like 4 people racing, whatever. It's not a problem to look
Yeah.
at those. But 2,000 Atlas pictures, just as an example, would be a bit much, I think.
And
yeah,
this
for
is the
sure.
thing
Like
as well.
size
Yeah.
of event, the size of event for sure, but then also the hours the event runs too. So like
Yes.
one of the largest support crews we've ever organized was for the first Awakener kill. I don't know if you guys remember, but they promised
Yeah.
24/7 coverage, and that had me scrambling to put together crews. We had, I think, 21 support crew total, 3 people working in 7 different shifts at a time.
Mm.
And
That
yeah,
was
it was
crazy that
a
that actually
absolute,
like
yeah, it was
went.
a ton to organize
Yeah. Yeah.
I
because
remember there were
we
like
couldn't.
different caster duos, like all there was like coverage basically all the time, right? There's
It
like
was
different people
24/7 all
casting.
the way until it was
Wow.
killed.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest challenges too was that a lot of our other casters either were streamers themselves or had like jobs and real life obligations. So part of not part of organizing the support crew wasn't just getting like clips and stuff fed to the casters like you would normally think, like, oh haha, somebody died, let's send that over. But we also had to have basically someone be a sort of like a scribe, right? So that the
Mm.
Yeah.
crew coming on would have a set of notes to look at to know what happened the 12 hours before. Because if you have a crew sit down and they have no clue the
All right.
context where they
Where
are in
are
the
we?
race, right? Like
Yeah.
that's not very professional.
Yeah.
And so like there is even more organization and more sort of like care put to these sorts of things so that the cast could be at least somewhat contiguous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. With BPL, from what I from what we've experienced this time, we've learned so much and we've realized so much of what BPL can still grow towards, and the things that it can grow towards are daily highlight videos and live casting if that was possible. But as you're saying, and as you've done in the past, Brittleknee, like, and it worked really well, but it's a lot of organization time. Is even for BPL, if it's going to be 4 to 7 days, whatever we do decide next time, that's a lot to cover if we want to try and cover as much as we can. And with so many people playing and being a team event rather than a solo individual based event, how do you cast that? How do you focus on a particular person or a particular team? There's a lot there that we're very interested in developing and moving forward to, but it's big.
Yeah, I would definitely say a highlight video is probably your best bet for anything.
Yeah.
We found that like in taking the mistakes and sort of the learning points of the Awakener race, the very first gauntlet, we were sort of trying to figure out how we were going to handle casting on that. And that's when I was like, look, this is something I've always wanted to do, just like let me run with this idea. And so that's when sort of like the newscast that Ziggy and I did kind of sprung up.
Yeah.
And it ended
Such
up
a
being
good
like
idea. It was
That was
amazing.
really good to watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
it ended up being the perfect formula for covering these sort of longer term events that need highlights and need like progression so that someone's like, oh, there's this event going on. Oh, I can go watch, like 2 videos and be completely up to date with what's going on right now. Like perfect. And so this is end up like, no, even if you like run with the silly newscast tropes or just go for like a highlight style video, I feel like either is applicable and probably good, but
Yeah.
it definitely seems to be the corresponding like coverage format for these longer events for sure.
Yeah, because I
Definitely.
think there's like per on like an hourly basis, there sometimes just isn't enough happening. There will be like hours or 1, 2, 3 hours at a time where
It's
everyone is
always
just
been
mapping, and
it's always been the challenge with PoE casting
yeah,
is that
Yeah.
unlike certain things like not even we don't even have to go for like League of Legends and World Sports like that, but even something like WoW's World First series, right? each reset is something new to talk about. Each reset on a boss, even if they wipe 20 seconds into it, there's mistakes that have been made, things
Yeah.
to learn, different mechanics encountered. There's like so many little ways to break down what has just happened, that even though they're wiping on the same boss for 14 hours or however long it is, I don't know, I don't watch these things, like there's still engaging things to talk about each and every time,
Yeah.
whereas like this guy is going up Blood Aqueducts. Now he's coming back down Blood Aqueducts. Now he's going back up Blood Aqueducts. And now he's
Oh,
coming
humility
back down
drop.
Blood
Yeah.
Aqueducts. And oh yes, that's one of two, like so there's
Exactly.
definitely like complete dead zones in like PoE. And that's always been a real challenge, not only for event creation and trying to like sort of manage your events knowing that you're going to have these periods of dead time. So what do? Do you make it like an A5 race versus the first level 80 because there's just a whole bunch of boring mapping that happens? Or is it an XP race, and like where do you cut it off? 1 hour, 2 hours, and stuff like that. So there's just like a lot of little fiddly bits that happen with like trying to plan these sorts of events, that time is one of the considerations, and then content is certainly the other.
Definitely, yeah. I think Path of Exile doesn't lend itself amazingly, as you're saying there, to the format of kind of constant excitement. But we're seeing some pretty fun and interesting shoutcasting coming from. Well, I was just watching yesterday, and Rise does do a pretty amazing job of keeping things entertaining the whole way through. It's not a great time for me, so I think I watched from like 9 p.m. till 3 a.m. So the first 6 hours, and then I went to bed. But Rise did a really, really good job of keeping that extremely entertaining the whole way through. Yes, we did have a lot of people blasting very fast, so there was a lot to talk about. But even in the dead zones, Rise's knowledge was pretty nice in giving backstory to people's experiences and everything like that. And so, as someone as involved in the scene, he does a really good job. Yeah.
I think he does a good job because he's like one thing that Rise always does is that he knows everyone in the scene pretty well, and he like always has like some like funny background bits about people, or like knows every race's like strengths and weaknesses historically, and can like comment on how they're doing compared to where they were in the past, or what you would expect. And I think that was really fun to watch. I watched like a few hours yesterday as well, and that was I think a really cool cast, especially like for a one-man cast, which is I think
great. Yeah.
Pretty difficult
It's actually one of the things that this era of PoE racing is missing, that I think was really endemic to the previous like GGG official ones, is that there's no longer these. Well, I guess for the camel events we weren't consistent enough, but the era of racing where there were these sort of rivalries, and if you were going to try and compete in a certain class, there were people that were absolutely dominating certain ascendancies, and there was these sort of storylines woven through the entire thing that would, even from an outside perspective, if you weren't someone that was racing in these events, you could follow and sort of be strung along and like interested in. And we have a little bit that here and there, like certain rivalries between like Tai Tai and Havoc will pop up from time to time in short format races. The, sort of like emergence of Exile to the scene. Like we have sort of these like upsets and sort of these change arounds and new people coming into the scene, but that sort of overarching narratives and stories that sort of drives a lot of viewership and drives a lot of interest in certain things, like we haven't really quite been able to establish that in the same capacity that existed before. And I'm not really sure what the missing formula is. Is it just too many different types of events? Is it the events that maybe they weren't consistent enough in the beginning, because it was really only Camel pushing events out at the beginning, like the level 80 races, and that started from being 3 times a league going down to just 1 time a league before he retired.
I think we're starting to see a bit more of that, though.
Yeah, it might be happening.
The scene is kind of re-evolving, or I don't know how you'd put it, but I am starting to see more of that come through, especially with kind of metas being a little bit more solidified within the racing scene, and people dominating in the past in gauntlet races such as Lighty or Darky. And as you said as well, Exile rising to the scene as well, and showing really, really insane colors. Khan just being an absolute beast on Slayer and everything like that, and kind of taking that ascendancy for his own and loving it, and all this other kind of stuff as well. I'm seeing it start to rise to the surface a bit more, and it's really great. Yeah.
I think it's because of the consistency. I think the
Yeah,
fact
I
that
think
we
so
are
as well.
actually locking in events now that this can start to form. And I
Yeah.
think the more these storylines sort of get drawn out and become something that people can hook into, I think it's going to be really good for the scene overall.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I think storylines is like the key to like have a more main like community appeal, like a mass appeal, because those storylines is what actually gets people attached to certain races, certain teams, certain events. Because the actual like small intricacies of racing, like how do you like go this fast? Like how is it like how is this person leap slamming better than the other person or whatever? That I don't think that interests a large enough audience to like get like some bigger mass appeal, while like rivalries, memes, that type of stuff gets people involved more.
For sure. I mean, it's not only something that's just conducive to esports. Like, sure, you have like your league rivalries between different teams, but then like you extrapolate that into like real world sports, like Man U versus,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even there's like certain people, like so certain things. Of course, like people care about the sport to a certain degree, but oftentimes they either don't play any more themselves, they maybe used to, or they they care. Oftentimes these days, it's also about the people and about the stories and the narratives, and that's what like sports newspapers are about. Not always in a good way, but that's at least how it is here in Germany. It's mostly about the people and the stories and the drama. Not that I really want that in BOE, but like to a certain extent, to have like a little bit of a fun rivalry and a little bit of a like a story and like I think consistency is I think key to have a constant narrative flow happening, because if you only hear about some racer like every half a year or so, that doesn't really help you to follow along and actually have like I don't know, feel like you're following them along in their path.
Yeah, and those stories, like as I kind of said as well, like I do believe those kind of stories that casters or events will be able to latch on and tell more in that downtime. That's what's being developed now, in my opinion. That's coming through with these more scheduled events with some really interesting stuff happening in the Havoc Blasts, in Gauntlet, in the Blitzes and everything like that as well. And I'm seeing more and more people, just go, hey, I'm gonna give this racing thing a go, and that's what we want, people to just start trying, more people coming to the scene, more surprises, more upsets, all this kind of stuff. I'm really excited to see where things go. If we can really, solidify a really, really good, I guess, in quotation marks, racing season or community event season in place. It's really, really cool. I just saw someone in chat. I don't usually address chat during the podcast, but talking about the fun races, in comparison to the really what would you call them? I lost the word. Like that. Yeah, competitive races versus the fun races, and I think there really needs to be a balance of the two. You can't just say like, oh, the future's just going to be these fun, everyone involved races like BPL, because you need to have something fun to watch and to aspire to as well, like these races with people who play the game way better than I could ever dream to play the game. That's so much fun to watch to me, and but then also having events set up where everyone else can be involved and maybe try a little bit of that, or be involved in a smaller capacity, I guess, like BPL, where you're working as a team rather than as an individual. I think just variety is what we need, right?
I think that's been really cool about sort of like at least if we take the last two leagues, especially with Havoc sort of emerging with these short format races, in addition to the Team Blast, it's really cool because now we have sort of specializations occurring where you have your team events, which are completely different than anything else that exists in the community right now, but are still highly competitive and are structured in such a way that everyone can feel like they're contributing, which is very beneficial to the overall scene. And then you have things that are, sort of like more accessible to softcore players, like the Team Blast that's going on right now, that if you want to be competitive but in a softcore environment, you can still do that. And then you have the Gauntlet, which is basically the hardest content because it's all of the mods plus hardcore.
Yeah, the most hardcore.
And on your own.
Yeah,
and on your own,
Yeah.
And then
No
you've
help.
got sort of like this the event that he does towards the end, which is all the short format stuff. So that's for the people that really love like perfecting the story, get to cut their teeth as well. And then not that the bingo league is anything that's too big, but that's sort of like a really weird mix of very competitive and also super casual, because we have people that kind of just like the challenge of 1 or 2 squares, or the people that go super hard. So it's just kind of it's sort of like in between everything else is like this weird pseudo event that goes on.
Well, I think the bingo league it really just fills that box of
people don't want
a
to
strong
like super
format that's
compete
different every
necessarily.
league.
Yeah.
Yeah. A strong format that's
that's
really
like the
different
cool thing.
based on
Kind
based
of like
on the
the
bingo card.
challenges you talked about earlier that make you play a bit differently. I think that's
Yes.
like a little bit how
100%.
bingo league is as well, where you have to like think out of the box. Like, okay, I never really thought how to do this, but somehow I have to get 2 ghosts into a beyond boss now, and stuff like that. And I always found that that's really cool. That's like I think I'm someone who like very rarely plays events. The only thing I think that I played twice was bingo league. So
yeah,
because I like the thinking out of the box type stuff. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's community driven challenges. Like what we have our 36, our 40 challenges in game, but they're community crafted, community driven, just by the imagination of you guys, right? Which is really really cool. Even if I'm not participating in the bingo, because I play sometimes, and then depending on what events are happening or other stuff is happening, I might not play. But it's so exciting just to see the bingo card when it comes out. I'm like, oh wow, okay, what would I do?
Yeah, even if I don't have time to play, I always look at it and exactly the same. And I was like, oh, how would you do that? Okay, how would one go about this?
Some kind of meta strategies evolving with the whole bingo card is really really cool. I like it.
Yeah, I was surprised how well balanced they are as well. Like that, there's rarely like one line where you're like, okay, this is like definitely the easiest to get your bingo. It's like I've always been like, okay, there's at least like one annoying or tricky thing in there, which I think is cool.
Puzzles. I like puzzles and patterns. So putting the card together every league is a pleasure. I enjoy it.
That's
immensely.
great. Yeah. One thing that I was gonna quickly, I guess, mention or kind of bring to the table as well, as we were talking about, I guess the more kind of short form races, whether it's even just like Act 1 race or Act 3, Act 5 race and everything like that, and we did see it at ExileCon. I think is the only time I've really strongly seen it. It might have been in previous race leagues a long time ago, official race leagues, but having a set seed for zones, because the way that Path of Exile works is each zone does have a variance to it, a kind of a structured randomness. You take the riverways zone or something like that. You're going to find a couple of rivers, but where exactly they're going to be and where those bridges are going to be and whether they're going to be broken or whether they're not going to be broken, that's where the variance happens. And I don't know. Do you think for the future, if it was possible, do you think that would be a very positive thing to happen to these short form races? I don't know.
Something I've asked for. I think it was probably April of last year, I put a proposal in front of GGG that was like, if you want to support and save racing, this is the stuff you guys should probably think about implementing sooner rather than not later. Please, God, please give us these features. Part of it was the biggest part of it was actually splitting the current private league system into like race leagues and then private leagues. So the longer events could still have basically access to all those different modifiers and the ability to scale the duration of the league from 10 days all the way to, I think the max is like 50 or 60 days or something like that.
2 months, I think, 60 days, yeah.
And then so what the race leagues would be something that wouldn't like go more than 48 hours in duration, like maximum. And they would have different types of modifiers, like they could be void leagues where everything would instantly get deleted so that they wouldn't impact any sort of economy that would happen. Maybe they would cost less because they would not last as many days and be more accessible for short format races and for organizers to get involved with that. Maybe they would have adjustable DC timers in order to like allow people to do those log situations and not get disconnected as often and die during certain bosses or otherwise. And then have like hard XP or boss cutoff. So as soon as Damus was dead, your character would freeze or something like that. So you would know you would have like set endpoints, or if it was 2 hours of XP, then your character would freeze right at 2 hours. And these are all sort of things, and fixed seed is definitely a part of that we were asking for, because between, like, especially if it was like a void league or something like that, like you could definitely sit down and have like fixed seed speedrunning, for example, which would be awesome, right? You get to learn your track, you get to go over and over and over again, and we get to see like this really sort of like expertise being applied to clearing these routes to the way that we haven't seen since Ty 23 was basically doing a lot of the racing. Ty was somebody that knew like what mobs to kill based on the XP that they gave in a zone to perfectly map out the exact amount of XP needed before a certain boss.
Yeah.
Like, so, and then he would, in addition to that, he would know whether or not to drop Frost Bomb or Orb of Storms on them to kill that pack. Like, the precision in which, and the time dedicated to racing that this person put in was incredible. And if we could offer fixed seed, speedrunning, that's something that we could see emerge again, which would be really, really cool. And then to see like a really competitive ladder emerge around it would be really neat too.
Yeah. And on top of the competitive stuff, there used to be like a lot of different race types in the past.
Yeah.
And we've also had a endless delve recently, which I think could be something that could be nice as a like 48-hour race type league.
You could have Descent Champions again, Endless Ledge.
Yeah, Descent Champion, Endless Ledge. Headhunter races.
Like, these could all be like, if all of the race leagues were automatically voided no matter what, then you could open up so many different potential like modes because they're not economy affecting at that point in time. You could have an endless delve like 48-hour race. You could have
exiles everywhere.
Have whatever you wanted. And like for me personally, I'm someone that came to the game at 3.0. Like, yeah, I made a character back in 2013. I ran Alliance IA Watch and went, what the fuck is this? And went back to WoW. But when I came back, I stayed. But I missed all of that in the meantime. Like I missed the entire race seasons and all that other kind of stuff. And it's just kind of like, I'd like to experience these things. The only thing I got to do is the Battle Royale.
Yeah. I actually missed that because I was only one day, and if you didn't play that day, it's just like, okay.
Yeah, true.
But yeah,
I miss the other things as well, like the cutthroat. Cutthroat was pretty cool, or how that all worked. I guess it was that was a variation. Or the Battle Royale was a variation of Cutthroat, but Cutthroat would be really fun to have some sort of short form Cutthroat races or something.
Just Cutthroat never really works for long term because at some point you'll have like people so much stronger that they can like hold progression of other people, farm other people. But the short form Cutthroats have always been really hilarious, especially to watch, but also to play. And like after you've like gotten to a point where you just get farmed, you usually like nope out, and then you can watch the rest of the people do something else. But that was always hilarious to watch.
And this is the thing I guess we could talk about as well, and whether we agree or not with we don't hold all the data in our hands and everything like that, and take it with a grain of salt as well, because I'm sure I'm not quoting directly from what GGG has said in the past, but there's this general air, and I'm sure they've said things like this before, of why these events aren't coming back as much. And people are saying it has to do with both kind of player retention and burnout and everything like that as well. If you give us too much variation and too much to play, are we going to come back in droves for the next official league launch, right?
That was the official reason given by Chris at some point in time.
Yeah, and that's why I said, I'm sure I'm not quoting exactly, but that's the general air that's being given, right? What do you think about that, Brittleknee? And what's been your kind of experience trying to navigate that and trying to change the minds of that kind of official response?
I've been at this for 2+ years now, and it is very frustrating. It is, but I completely understand it. In a way, like, I guess in a way comparing to like a real life example, and like in the way that when the body undergoes something like traumatic, like a big injury or something like that, like in the way that your body will consolidate blood back to the core of you, like they have done the same sort of thing in their development cycle without pushing PoE 2 out, is like they're shunting everything away from these other projects and things that they used to do in order to make sure that they can deliver.
Yeah.
And so trying to convince a company that's basically in what like I guess equates to survival mode isn't going to be very fruitful. But we had a glimmer of hope at the end of the ExileCon race where Chris got up on the stage and he was like, we're going to make racing a priority in 2020. And like all of us were like, oh my God. Which is why like I started immediately, like the gif of the cat that's like typing on the keyboard all crazy. Like that was me that night. I was writing up that proposal, getting it ready. I was like, all right, let's do this. This is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we're going to do. And it's really frustrating, but on one side I completely understand it, but I also feel like they could give a little bit more too.
Yeah.
Like we have grown from, every like 3 weekends in the league with like $200 on the table for, a level 80 race to basically like being able to call something an event season.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
And
I think that has been without like official support from GGG. That has been like community scraping together everything they can to like make this work and make this happen. And it's also not the first time, and it's happening again and again. And I think that really shows that there is a part of the community that wants this to happen, and that's not a super small one. And people are dedicated to do this. And I think a little bit of support, I think, would go a long way to make this a lot better than it has been so far. And it's already pretty good.
Is like how much has the COVID like situation and like cut down the ability to hire in people, expand the team, etc. Like we don't know a lot about what happens beyond the scenes. I've been in some conversations, stuff I probably shouldn't say here, but what I can say is that there are people in GGG that love racing, that they are very keen to have it back. How do I phrase this next part? Happy to assist us keeping the pilot light on, essentially.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it is. Like that it'll have to be when they can actually bring folks to the table and make it happen, but they are happy with what we're doing and have been supporting us in some ways.
Yeah. But what do you think, Brittleknee, is the best thing that the average person, average viewer, or even participator, or aspiring participator could do to just help grow these events? What do you think is like the single, or it's not single thing, but what's the best thing for the event season for people to kind of take one step towards?
Biggest thing that would actually turn their head towards making a development cycle is something that's almost impossible to prove numerically and through statistics. We would basically have to prove that through our event season, all of us together, we create a like bump in their cycle that would have been like without the event season, those people would not be playing PoE. Like if we could prove that we are adding playership to their base, thus creating the values that they care. I mean, like, I'm not saying they don't care about Twitch viewership. I'm not saying they don't care about the advertising that happens with these larger events or anything like that. But I think for them to really drive development to it, we need to prove somehow by stripping away other factors and other senses, like if we could somehow statistically prove that we are actually creating more playership by running these versus them not occurring at all, then maybe we can actually get the development. But for the time being, I don't know. We've like part of the proposal was to set up like a supporter pack, like kind of how they had the First Blood one for new characters, but something like that specifically geared towards racing to basically let people put money where their mouth is and like say, hey, we want to support the development of racing. This supporter pack will then pay for the the development of the various leagues or the upgrades or the mods or whatever that we're asking for. That would be pretty cool. But the most important part is just to be involved, simply being involved, whether it's from watching something on Twitch to joining the community racing server and being a spectator and watching through there, or trying out some of the different racing events yourself. A lot of them more and more now are being completely open to the public, whereas before we were really limited in what we could do because of the private league system and sort of how cost prohibitive they were. That's why the qualified racing tag emerged as a way to sort of like consolidate the participants of of high skill level so that the cast could be entertaining. More and more of these events are completely open, so it's like, don't be afraid, take a bite out of it, see if it's a thing for you, and watch it when you can if you're interested in it. Get a six-pack and a pizza and enjoy some racing.
Yeah, and that watching, that watching, participating in that way of just kind of watching it does, just to kind of talk on that a little bit more. That is a statistic that we can use, right? And I, for the first time, my team as well, have started trying to gather statistics and develop a sheet to be able to present in the future, either to sponsors or to GGG, of like, look, this, these are our impressions that this generated. These are everything that we've got. So it's not just like, hey, come and have a bit of fun, watch our event. You're actively helping doing that. For us to kind of legitimize all of this even more, this all of this community run stuff, which is really cool. So yeah, that's good.
Nice. Yeah. I mostly watch, but I'm always having a ton of fun. I'm really happy. I'm like maybe like added a bit to like a prize pool or whatever, stuff like that. But for the most part, I just like watch and try to support where I can. But I'm like super uninvolved with racing. But I love like the rip clips from Gauntlets, the memes and the stuff and the rivalry and the Havoc Team Blast is super fun. And just seeing people like completely destroy PoE while I'm like scrambling along the campaign, and I'm like, okay, Tai is in Act 5. I just killed Brutus. What is happening? Stuff like that. I just love people like mastering the game and seeing that part as well. Like all these different. There's like so many different things to racing that I enjoy. I think that's really cool.
Oh yeah. No, it does make me feel pretty bad about my own personal speed running capabilities, but
sometimes,
it's also this league. I think the switch is flicking where I'm like, all right, I'm going to be putting some dedicated time to learning how to race better, learning how to progress through acts better, which it's working on me. This whole event season is working on me, and I want to be able to participate more and have a bit of fun with my viewers with it and everything like that as well. So it's really cool. So yeah.
I will admit I've also put a tiny bit of effort with me leveling more characters now. Like by the third character, I was like, okay, maybe I should like at least like watch a little bit of a tutorial on like what to look out for and like plan out my gems and stuff. And it's actually kind of fun. Like I'm probably leveling like down twice as fast, but then I come from like such an abysmal time that's not very impressive. But I'm leveling faster, so that's good.
Yeah.
And it's actually fun to like improve and try to like find things to do better and like not waste time with like socketing your gear when you don't really have to, stuff like that.
Even if it's just setting up a gym progression and knowing what sockets you need.
It's so much of a difference.
It's a huge difference because then you're not like bumbling around at the vendor being like, what do I need to get?
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh no, that was a level 12. All right. Yeah. Just not doing that. Yeah. Like if I could give one recommendation where to start, just like map out your gem progression. Be like, okay, at library I'm gonna get this. At Act 2 I'm gonna get this, and then at this level this quest. Just like have like a little bit of a list. That for me was so much extra time. You also at that point you already know, okay, what links will I have, what colors will I need. You look out for these colors, highlight them in your filter, and that alone, like, and I did like maybe like 10 of these tiny things that like don't seem like much, and that cut my time in half, like literally in half.
Oh yeah.
I was like, I took like freaking 12 hours or something, but now I take 6. Yay.
Yeah, and that's for anyone who wants to try and just if you don't like the act, if you're like, ugh, okay, I got to level a new character, the best thing that you can do is probably if you haven't looked at much of it, you can, as Yoji said, the first little steps that you can make will probably halve your act time. From there it gets harder and harder to get it quicker and quicker, but you can go from 12 hours to 6 hours with just the simple things of learning a couple of important layouts in specific areas that might take a bit longer. Getting
Val
a gem
City,
list.
I can recommend learning that. It's a horrible zone if you don't know what. It's actually not as difficult. I looked like Carve made like a cheat sheet for like the Val City stuff.
That actually blew my mind, man.
Yeah, I was like, wait, the zone is so easy. I always take like 10 minutes to find the exit, and I'm like, okay, apparently just walk to the wall and go around. There's like one layout that's slightly different. Everything else is just like walk around. And I was like running around the circle, like, okay, where is it? Like,
It's one of the things that I'm working on compiling for the PoE racing community is kind of gathering these resources so people can get started. So one of the major changes I made last league was actually having a getting started in videos and resources section. So if you're going to the server, there's a roles and authentication sort of like channel. You do exclaim racer to give yourself a racing role. And that will open up all the different racing related channels so that you can talk to other racers about strategies, etc. But then it also includes these new resources where we're starting to compile tutorials on like, all right, if you have never played PoE before, here's a guide to get through the story. If you've played a little bit and want to get faster, like here are your next resources, here are your layout guides, here are your gym progression guides, and so on and so forth. So I'm really trying to compile this so that it can be a lot more approachable, because there's a lot of content creators that are creating this sort of content, but it's all over the place. So I'm really trying to bring everything together, and it just seems like the natural home for it, of course. So if you're
and that Discord link will Yoji, I'm pretty sure we'll put in the description of the video and everything. And so if you want to go join the community racing Discord, please go click that link and check that stuff out. That's the first awesome step.
Something that you want to improve personally and never, like maybe not participate in races, like that resource is still available. Like you can still go grab all those different links and learn more about the story.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and some people will always like be like, okay, I'm like pretty happy with my act time now, but some people will get hooked at like the improvement cycle of Doom and like maybe become racers. So I think it's always worth pointing people towards that. But even if you don't race, just being quicker to maps, even in Trade League, or if you don't enjoy the acts, funnily enough, learning to do them better will shorten your time with them.
And probably make you enjoy them more, because you will want to, continually improve. Yeah. You're not gonna come to Act 7 and be like, all right, I got to get through the whole of Act 7 again. You'll be like, okay, this, Ancient City. There's another, example again of Ancient City. Ancient City last time, my Ancient City was pretty bad. How can I improve it this time? Kind of more of a micro focus, as well it does make it more enjoyable. My problem is my acceptance of inefficiency within myself. call it like, a sense of ADD or something. I don't know. Like I'm so, it's so easy for me to just go, whatever. I'll do this inefficiently. I don't care. I'll come to that problem when I need to. So overcoming that for myself, that's a big one. I'm trying to get over that hump.
It was, for me, it started when I started casting, because and learning the different strategies and breakdowns, and one of the things is both socket and currency pressure and early early story, because you have to have the different, sockets, but then also you must have, this many transmutes by this time, so when you get to the vendor, you can actually afford it. And part of racing efficiently is knowing when to pick up rares and ID them for alteration cards, for your, your level 21s, and what dreams to pick up, and then trying to hit every single essence you can. And like, so just in paying attention to like the information I needed to know that was relevant to talk about while casting, it made me better at the game too.
Yeah, of course.
It was like really cool, like just to be able to take some research and apply it to like my own playing. And it actually, getting involved in the racing scene turned me around entirely. I was definitely team, like, there needs to be, the like how D3 has like the mode where you can ignore the story and just do greater rifts until you're level 70. Like I was definitely like very firmly in team, like we need this other shorter leveling progression, and went the other side of the spectrum to where this is fine. Just like it's part of like PoE's whole thing. Just like try to make it the shortest, sweetest trip possible, and then enjoy the end game, right? So it actually turned me around on it entirely once I actually could approach it and get through it quicker.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like I guess that's going to be an eternal kind of argument within the community or anything like that as well. Of like do we just do we just want Path of Exile to be Path of Exile and just have this set leveling process, or do we want to make it a more casual experience, like as you said, the Diablo 3-esque style of a more kind of formal leveling progression in terms of, well, not formal, but the greater rifts, or just doing rifts until you're a high enough level to do more riffs, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, having the exact same and like leveling as the end game is. I always felt that was a bit of a weird choice.
Yeah.
I still think there could be maybe some different leveling approaches or whatever. But
Yeah.
I mean, we will soon have two campaigns to choose from, which is
Yeah.
I think
Just
definitely what
gonna comment on that. Yeah, that'll shake up
what
things immensely. I'm scared for Path of Exile 2, honestly.
Excited. Ah,
I'm
Yeah.
so excited to
excited, but
play a different
it's changed so
story.
much.
I'm gonna clear, like, I'm gonna go back to my roots. Like, when I played in 3.0, like, the first time leveling the maps, like, I full cleared every zone. Like, identified the entire map, killed every single monster, put it in the
Yes.
chest, and then went to the next one. And I'm actually kind of really excited to do that again. I can't wait just to go back to being brand
Oh,
new
clearly
and
PV2.
exploring everything. And oh, I'm so excited.
And I think it'll be much more entertaining to do that. You know, seeing what we've seen so far, and we've only caught glimpses, but the glimpses that we've seen of, you know, some of the act bosses or kind of sub act bosses, the zones of, you know, Act 1 and 2 of the new campaign that we've seen so far, you know, that makes me go, I do want to full clear zones. I'm not that kind of person in any game. As I said, I'm I really like inefficiency, and there's some weird reason, so I'll just kind of fumble my way through. But that's, you know, that's making me go, hey, there's some crazy investment here in really bringing this into as much of a modern scene as they can, and I want to explore all of this. It's going to be really cool. Yeah, very excited.
I'm hoping for a bit more variety than the current 10 acts. I think people will eventually grow tired of the PoE2 campaign as they have grown tired of basically everything. But
Of course, yeah.
At least like the majority of people. But I'm hoping that there will be more variety, and I think there might very well be more variety from what we've seen, because currently like the second half of the game is basically like recycled, a lot of recycled stuff from the first half of the game, and only the first 5 acts are really feel original and or are pretty original. And I think there's a lot of improvement happening, which will make this feel better. But I mean, the current 10 acts, you have to like always keep in mind that's the improvement from running the exact same stuff 3 times. Back in the day, even 4 times. Now, 3 times. Now we at least have like 10 different acts, which of course the second half recycles. And PV2 will be like the next step where hopefully everything is original and feels very different, and there's more variety. So I'm pretty hopeful for that.
Even if PoE2's campaign loses a little bit of like its luster, there still can be pleasure in doing like the same things over and over again. Like that's what speedrunning is, a lot of the short format writing is. And if the campaign and stuff is interesting enough, the zones are compelling enough, and like the different strategies and whatnot are there, then it doesn't really matter how like boring it ends up being as far as mundane. There's still like routes through different areas and whatnot that are interesting. Like just the work that's being done in the scene on layout reading alone.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's something that's not even lore related. It has nothing to do with how bosses are designed. It has nothing to do with characters. It's just learning the layouts. And that's like an entire like there is one person in particular who is just like completely dedicated. This has multiple guys out for Act 1 and 2 and stuff like that. It's working kind of on the backbone of a lot of the work that Carve did originally.
Yeah.
And so I think even though for me it just comes down to like which one is more interesting to play, and that for me is a mix of how it feels to run through the different zones in addition to the story and then boss design, because I love acts 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 through 10 feels like a 14-year-old's really bad D&D campaign.
It really does. As someone who has
Like,
run D&D campaigns at 40 years
and
old,
then I'm
I
gonna
can confirm.
kill this boss, and then I'm killing this god, and this god, and this god, and this god, and I'm just killing everybody. And it's just like, come on, dude, you can't god mode.
And
Act
then
4 to me was
funnily
perfect.
enough,
It was
the
very good.
Back to the Atlas is like a lot more like down to earth again, which is always feels a bit weird. I mean, yes, it's like this weird contraption, but it's a lot more mysterious. It's not like we're killing gods, we're like almighty. It's more like, all right, there's this mysterious thing, and that's like all everything's just like down a notch again. That's why I think it feels even more out of place.
That was really exciting about PoE2 to me, is like that sort of return to the like dark and gritty, you know, like the graveyards in Act 1, and sort of like monsters popping out of the different stuff. Like it's just, it feels like we're coming home again in some ways to like the genre and what the action RPG genre has always been. And it
Yeah, I
like
think-
that's why PoE2 is so exciting to me, because so much of it is familiar. And the fact that we got a desert act too, I was like, yes,
a lot of people
Mhm.
were like, "Oh."
Mhm.
following the
Well,
format. It's following the format.
Yep.
Also about the act two, what they said about like you have this like moving caravan and they have these different branches there where you can like take different routes. That will be very exciting for speedrunning, finding the most efficient like
Yeah,
way
that's what I was about to
to
say.
do the
It comes down
storyline.
to what sort of like endpoint quest rewards are there. Like if
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
a pair of boots or something, like of course they're gonna go for it first for like the potential of movement speed or otherwise. So it'll largely
Also,
determine like what sort of rewards come out of it.
Mhm.
but also the difficulty of the fights. Like maybe one fight you don't want to take on until you got X skill because the fight will be too difficult. I think there will be a lot of different ways to try this, and I think there's also potential of okay, this is now the dominant strategy, and then like either new skill releases or something, and that might totally shift how you attack
Yep.
that
New
new
skill
act
or
now.
balancing of the
Yeah,
bosses or
balancing.
zones or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot of potential of like shaking things around, and even if stuff stays the same, that new strategies can be discovered because that act alone seems to be more of difficult beast to tackle from a optimization and speedrunning point of view. So I think
That's
that's
really
going to be
interesting as
exciting,
well.
and that's only the second act.
Yeah.
Yeah. We see that a little bit, or we have seen it evolve a little bit in terms of, I guess the best example I can give is Act 8 of the current um, storyline,
After
where
Dodre, where you can go
yeah, you've
two
got
ways.
the two different splits, and I think in the past we've seen a little bit of variation. Now it's kind of fairly solidly you go right up to Solaris and then through the bridge to Lunaris and then back and kill the boss. For the most part, and that's pretty solidified and solid. But that kind of initial discovery of like what is the fastest and most efficient way to go about this? Do we care about that skill point over there for now, or do we go the other way because it's a little bit quicker? What do we do? So that's really exciting to look forward to, I guess, especially in that caravan-esque travel system that we've been teased for the second act. That'll be really, really cool. Yeah. Just, as a whole, PoE2 is now I'm just even more excited for the racing scene of that. It's gonna be really fun. And getting a really solid scene, which is already starting to happen, up until the release of PoE2, where then we can go, all right, so Path of Exile 2 is released. We've got this whole structure here. How can we slot Path of Exile 2 into this structure to really have the most fun with it? And when PoE2 comes as well, it's guaranteed that we're going to see, as a community, and GGG will see, such an influx of new players into the game. So having, a solidified racing season there as well, it really excites me from a growth standpoint of everyone involved, GGG and community members. It's pretty exciting to me. I'm very, very excited. Wow.
Big agree from me.
Yeah. Agreements.
I think we've crossed the board.
We've pretty much covered everything we wanted to cover. There's a little bit at the end there that we might
we can leave that for
we can leave that?
someone
All right,
else.
we'll leave that next week.
I think that we've covered the event so well. I think we don't need to like dip into anything else from this point.
True. That's very true. Before we do kind of end up of this official episode on racing, Brittleknee, we did talk a little bit about it, the racing Discord and everything like that, and what is the best thing that people can do for the scene. But if I'll just give the floor to you if you just want to talk about anything else in particular coming up for you or the scene in particular, and point people towards the best things that they can do.
We'll definitely keep an eye on Zizarin's Twitter and stream for the announcement that's coming up for, of course, it's glove related racing.
Mm-hmm.
There should be Bingo League shortly after that, which is a short 10-day competitive league that I run. Then there will be the Havoc Blitz races, which are if you want to get into this short format racing and maybe do some practice in like the speedrunning season to sort of like nail down your Act 5 times or something like that. You can do some practice in our season and then sign up and participate in the actual Blitz event that's happening. It's usually 2 weeks before the new league. So there's, three main events to look forward to in the remaining of the season. So there's still plenty of stuff to do.
And the best place to keep up with that is the community racing Discord, right?
I think, yep, the Blitz will be announced there, and of course the Gauntlet is run out of that server as well. So like all Gauntlet related stuff will be in their channels, and information from there. There's going to be the usual like different prizes and stuff, so all sorts of neat things.
Awesome.
Nice.
I'm super
That's really
excited.
good.
I'm already starting to practice for the Gauntlet. Just with the extra mods. There's a hint or a little birdie flying around that there are some modifiers that may be changing this time around. Unconfirmed. Which should hopefully change things up a little bit, which would be pretty exciting.
That would be really nice. I mean, I'm mostly in the Gauntlet for the rip clips, and I think that might increase the amount of rip clips by a significant margin. I already bought a bottle of cider to drink while watching rip clips, so I'm very well prepared for the Gauntlet.
One of the new modifiers that is being introduced in the people that have been practicing so far, if you go through like the different racer channels where people are talking about this, they're like, oh my god, I wasn't paying attention, then this actually hurts now. So in addition to preparing for like the usual strategies of the increased like monster damage and all this other kind of stuff, like there's now the AoE mod, and that will make a lot of
70%
things
AoE. Yeah.
extremely spicy.
That is pretty spicy, yeah.
We're
so many bosses that makes like the whole boss encounter like so much more difficult.
Well,
like
there's
arena
there's
spacing.
already been certain things like that where I think it was Nismat had a crazy rip to the atoll boss because of like increased AoE and cast speed, where like actually had an ice nova kill her from one of its frost bolt things.
Yeah.
And like it actually chained the frost nova off onto her and killed her that way.
They can actually do that?
We had no idea the boss could do that, and now we're gonna have all this AoE, so certain situations like that are gonna happen again.
I think we're gonna see so much breaking.
I think there's going to be some very unexpected destruction of player characters.
Yeah. I think a lot more, the exciting rips as well. The exciting rips to me aren't the rips that happen just general mapping and just like one shot. Oh, wait, what was that? The exciting rips are when people are up against big endgame bosses and, make a mistake or don't read something correctly. And I think with increased area of effect, that is going to be happening a lot. And that's very exciting.
I'm already looking forward to Cirrus meteors being outside the maze and stuff like that. There's going to be some wacky stuff happening. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Here's to hoping that before introducing this mod, that they have done at least some testing.
There are certain things that if they break might be entertaining the first time, but then might. Be
how big are those storms going to be, though?
Yeah.
Let's get to the arena. Well, how do I even get to the boss here?
It's we're back to the release of Conquerors of the Atlas, right?
Yeah, we just enter and there's like a storm sitting on you and you're like, I have grace period, but what do I do next?
Yeah.
I've had that happen. Oh, that's pretty hilarious. But even like some of the normal bosses, slams and stuff, like a core boss, for example, when he has a lot of AoE on the map, the like normal slam, like you can actually get him currently to cover the whole arena, basically. So it's gonna be pretty exciting.
Yep. All in all, I think this will be a really, really cool shake-up. But as Brittle did say, just watch out for the official announcement through Zizaran's channel. You'll be able to see that on Twitter. You'll be able to see that through the Racing Discord. But he'll release a nice video of that, and then do some practice or check out pretty much not right after the end of this podcast. If you're watching live, in a couple of hours' time, the day 2 of the Havoc Blast is happening, and that's super, super fun to watch. And you can catch the live commentary on Rise QT's channel if you want to go check that out.
Yep, day 2 should be lots of boss killing too, so lots of action, not so much of the downtime. There should be someone to watch kill something at some point in time, because that's what most of the racers. We had some submissions for like Assyrian stuff. There were some of the Conqueror kills. We had Osiris. But we're gonna see a lot more of that roll in tomorrow.
Yeah, when the boss killers get ready. And so far it's been like a lot of setup for the Delve goals and like set up the Atlas and stuff like that. And I think it's going to get more exciting as we go further,
Yeah, I think that
Definitely.
the one part of it that was absolutely bonkers to me about the last one was Exile hitting level 98 in 24 hours played
Crazy.
Yeah, I
without
mean,
being like without like the full boosting strategies. Like I think we saw like a 12 or 18 hour level 100 or something like that, some league where they did like crazy group
Crazy
tactics or
stuff.
something
Yeah.
like that.
yeah,
But even though it was still group found, still 98 and 24 hours played was just
it's
remarkable.
still ridiculous. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
crazy. That's cool.
Um, yeah, so there's just a lot of excitement to come with all of these events. So I hope you guys are all excited. Us three are, well, as I can judge here, are pretty excited of everything coming through. Um, yeah. Yoji, what have you got going on? You'll just be drinking your bottle of cider and watching Gauntlet rips, right? When it comes.
That's pretty much the plan. I might do some of that on stream maybe. But other than that, no, I'm just like playing the normal league still. I'm bonking, playing some Berserker for one. Usually I play tanky characters. This league's been mostly me going out of my comfort zone, and I'm
Right.
I'm playing a small group found league for next league. That's kind of like what we're doing on the side as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Awesome.
so as next league starts, we're gonna do a group found with hopefully not too many people, but I don't think we're not going to like push it like super hard and see how that works. Kind of like SSF, but with more than one person. Other
Yeah.
than that, not really that much. I like going to watch events, play a bit, and then go into my off season because I got a lot of IRL stuff going on as well.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, look, same here kind of. I'm just, just pottering along. I'm very very much done with trade league this league and potentially for quite a while. It's becoming really really apparent to me how stale it is for me personally. I'm just saying on a personal level. And I think the future is going to be more practice in a hardcore environment, some more solo self-found softcore, and really just trying to improve my skills because I've just felt myself lacking in terms of actual Path of Exile experience and knowledge of just grinding things out, and instead just kind of being like, I'll just buy that, I'll just do that, and it's getting really stale for me. So some Gauntlet practice is going to be happening up until Gauntlet. Then we're going to play Gauntlet, and then I think I'm going to be doing some softcore race practice as well later for the Blitz at the end of the season. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, should be fun. But yeah, that's pretty much everything to cover. Thank you so much for coming, Brittleknee.
Thanks for having me on.
No problem. And your YouTube and stream can also be found just at their respective links /Brittleknee correctly. That is correct, right?
Yeah, I think the Twitch is Brittleknee. I think the Twitter and YouTube have the TV at the end, so it's Brittleknee TV.
Gotcha. Yeah. But if you just, if you chuck that into the search bar, you'll find it. But, if you're watching the video, links will be down below as well that you can go and click on. Be sure to go give Brittle a follow on all of those platforms because there's some very, very chill content happening at all times over there. I have more than once chucked Brittle's stream on and just been lulled to sleep, not in a boring way, in a very, very, very comforting way. So it's one of the smoothest, chillest streams out there. So yeah,
it's really chill, like very community based as well. Like I could also highly recommend like watching the stream a bit.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both.
No problem. Yeah, but that's it from us. Yes, this will be uploaded as soon as possible. We've fixed a couple of problems with some uploads corrupting, I think, that was happening on the podcasting application. So that should all be fixed. That should be going up as well. So thanks for being patient with all of that, but it will be on podcasting applications as well. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And as always, stay sane.
Stay sane,
Exiles.
exiles.